Thank you, Chairman. It's a pleasure to be here with distinguished participants coming from many different countries. What I'm going to share today with you is how can science be part of decision-making processes. So the word mainstreaming is a bit strong maybe, but that's the way we do it. We try to be heard so that the numbers that we've been collecting as in the scientific community can be used in the decision-making processes in both global as well as national level. So I would like to outline my talk, organize it in 4 different topics, try to introduce what we've been doing, and then looking at the things especially related to climate change, about the rate of carbon burial and deforestation rate, as well as greenhouse gas emission. A lot of scientists working on this area, and I think new information are coming out from the scientific community, and it's been very useful to have this data scattered all over the place, so that when we saw the distribution of mangrove, it's almost covered the entire globe. If you look at the data that are now available. Again, we look at the sub-theme of this conference: how can mangrove be part of the Paris Agreement? Perhaps more particularly looking at the role of mangrove for climate change mitigation and adaptation is very important to bring this idea into that kind of debate, as well as the debate related to the SDG. Why mangrove should be there? How can we find the place or entry point so that this important ecosystem, when we are trying to manage it sustainably, can be part of this global scheme. And looking at the environmental services, the other way around, I think it's also important from the local perspective. We've heard many times this morning about the importance of mangrove for the local community. It's direct use, direct access, and direct benefits. That's mainly not quantified easily, but it's a kind of day-to-day business or problem with the local people. So what I'm going to say is mainly based on our extensive work throughout the world, with the support of various partners. I have here in the room colleagues from the US Forest Service. We've been working across the globe and supported by USAID in a project called SWAMP, Sustainable Wetland Adaptation and Mitigation Program. And we cover both peatland and mangrove, but most of the time we found mangrove in these 25 countries. So I will pick some of the examples how the numbers can be used by these countries in the next processes, including the Paris Agreement as well as SDG. The word blue carbon has been very much used these days, but from time to time I heard people define it differently. Let me reiterate what we mean by blue carbon here. It is not the entire ocean, but it's very much related to a near coast kind of environment, so that we will be talking about coastal blue carbon, namely mangrove salt marshes and seagrass meadows that we are considering to be part of these processes. So if you look at the global map produced by UNEP WCMC, you can see here the yellow or pink one. It's a bit dark picture here. Mangrove, and you can see mostly scattered, as Chandra mentioned, in the tropics between 10 south and 10 north. We do not have salt marshes in the tropics, but seagrass is there. So these 3 blue carbon ecosystems are very important in many ways, not necessarily for climate change only, but the way they manage the ecosystem and the cycling of carbon, nutrient, and other services they can provide. So let's start from the capacity in burying carbon. So those three ecosystems are the highest among other main ecosystems. Salt marsh, mangrove, and seagrasses bury carbon 20 times as much as the rest of the ecosystem, including the tropical forest, boreal, and temperate forest. So the area is relatively small, but the capacity in burying carbon is huge. And yet they are very fragile. If we zoom in on mangrove as we are speaking today, we look at the amount of carbon below the ground that's been buried by the ecosystem is huge. More than 80% are in the soil environment. You can see the first 30 centimeters is very crucial, and it's easily disturbed by any kind of activities, including the ones below that. So 80% of thousands of tons of carbon are stored below the ground. So even if you see very small Avicennia with a carbon stock of less than 100 tons, the carbon below the ground can be 900 to 1,000 tons. So it's very important to know that the way we manage coastal environment, the way we excavate the soil and dry it out for any kind of land use, including aquaculture. Since we are here in Indonesia, I'd like to share with you what we found some 3 years ago about the amount of carbon in Indonesia from mangrove ecosystem. We measured in 8 sites consisting of more than 30 plots across Indonesia, and it's varying from very disturbed, and as a background we mostly measure in undisturbed situation. You can see here most of them are stored below the ground, more than 1,000 tons per hectare. The challenge, as I said earlier, is very crucial to know that we have places where mangrove are degraded, including Java, the northern part of Java, are very much severely degraded because of the aquaculture. And in the past, it's been a lot of product and industry coming out from Java island, but nowadays we can also see aquaculture product from Sumatra and also Kalimantan. But if we compare with the rest of the shrimp producing countries, Indonesia is number 3 after Thailand and Vietnam, but the rate of deforestation is very high. The DG of watershed this morning mentioned about 200,000 hectares, but I think that's a bit too exhaustive. It's about 50,000, that's big enough, hectare per year. And that kind of rate of deforestation costs more than or around 200 million tons of carbon release every year. And that is more than 30% of Indonesian emission from land use sector. So 190 million tons a year is a lot of carbon released from around 3,000 million tons or 3 petagram of carbon in the mangrove soil. Just to give you an idea how much is that. So 200 tons of carbon is equivalent to 40 million fewer cars on the road. So even if we can cut half of it, it's a lot of emission can be saved because of mangrove degradation. So land use change in mangrove ecosystem occur everywhere. If you have my presentation in your folder, this is a new slide which is just coming out last week, led by my colleague Boone Kaufman in the Frontier of Ecology and Environment journal, that most of the degradation are caused by shrimp industries in Latin America mainly, but also pasture for cattle raising. It's also surprising to learn that oil palm is now becoming a new threat for mangrove. The author is in this room, Jan Fries is sitting there in the middle. It was published 2 years ago in PNAS that in Sumatra, oil palm expansion occurred in the coastal zone and deforest mangrove area. Still, the main cause is shrimp industries, but it's becoming more and more important to watch what's going on with the coastal ecosystem as oil palm is expanding. We now have already 11.6 million hectares with crude palm oil production of 33 something million tons a year. Into 2020, it is expected to have 40 million tons. So you can imagine where to go, including peatland and mangrove, the next destination for oil palm expansion. Let me switch on the other side of coin, which is the ecosystem services that mangrove can provide. And there are many things, sorry, it's too small, but the four big group is the provisioning, supporting, regulating, and cultural function that mangrove can provide. Take an example of supporting and regulating services. Mangrove is a land builder because of this unique form of root system and the location in the coastal zone. Mangrove has been very effective in trapping sediment, if there are any, from both inland as well as from the open ocean, so that they can build land, new land, in order to cope with increasing sea level. According to the IPCC AR5, the assessment report, it is expected that we will have 1 meter higher level of sea level in the end of this century, 1 meter more. What's going to happen with the low-lying coastal zone? What's going to happen with the hydrology of mangrove, and including the salinity, the mixture of fresh water and the tiny mangrove, which are trying to colonize fringe as well as the mudflat. We did try to measure the situation by looking at how sediment capturing capacity of this ecosystem by measuring the change in elevation, change in accretion because of the presence of mangroves in different zones called interior, fringe, and the mudflat. We did try that across Indonesia, and colleagues in many different institutions in Southeast Asia, including National University of Singapore, Indonesian government, universities, doing a lot of things with regard to sediment measurement in various places, and also measurement in carbon stock, and both carbon stock and sediment. So basically, Southeast Asia is well covered with regard to carbon accumulation as well as sediment. So again, with regard to new information, science contribute a lot very recently in order to understand what's the role of this ecosystem for global challenges, including climate change and sea level rise. Sedimentation is a good thing in one sense, especially in coping with sea level rise, but not all ecosystems manage to cope with it. Especially we are talking about regional sea level rise. This is an example where the area cannot survive from sea level rise, regional sea level rise, even if it is in the interior part. So mangrove is threatened. In terms of sediment, it's about half a ton a year of carbon is accumulated or accreted in mangrove ecosystem. higher the ecosystem, I mean the stature, the higher the carbon that can be captured. It's also depend on from where the sediment is coming from. Is it locally or is it from somewhere else? So we try to quantify that. But in general, most mangrove can survive from global sea level rise up to 2070 using that IPCC scenario. But French mangrove can only survive in until 2055. I have to run very quickly to look at the provisioning services of mangrove. It's been mentioned earlier by Professor Sani that it's a good place for fish to spawn and hatcher there, and you can expect if you have mangrove, you will have fish and prawn. But if you don't have it, this dark guy is a big crocodile in Mahakam Delta. It's almost 5 meters long. So if you don't have fish, they might eat something else, including human being. It's an attractive place to look at. So this is the value of service for cultural, recreational. I do not have climbing crab like the picture here, but certainly this hornbill and spoonbill are very attractive. In Kalimantan, we see long-nosed monkeys and a lot of things that attract tourists, attract dollar, like the vice governor mentioned. It's attractive for tourism and raise money for local community. Now, big agenda, sustainable development goal, where mangrove can find its place. You can see here SDG 14, life below water. And on target number 2 of SDG 14, it's mentioned that marine and coastal ecosystem are very important. Restoration are key. And the target is 2020, only 3 years away from now. But I don't think we've done much about it. So it's a big challenge. But in Paris Agreement, it's very clear that mangrove has place. Climate change adaptation and mitigation has an equal place under the Paris Agreement. That's what I want to say in these slides. It used to be mainly focused on mitigation, but in Paris Agreement, both adaptation and mitigation has equal position. So let's keep that in mind, including the access to the fund to support climate change mitigation and adaptation, especially to the Green Climate Fund. And lastly, I think it's also important to mention about the network that we have. So it's good to work with a lot of people and community at work. The International Partnership for Blue Carbon was formed after Paris, and the members are countries as well as organizations working on mangrove. Mangrove, seagrass, and salt marsh. So if your country is not joining this partnership, please consider to be part of it, or your organization. It's been a lot of group to join this one, and it's going to have a bigger group as the time goes on. From scientific point of view, we will have a big conference in Southeast Asia. It's an international conference, the MMM5, which will be held in Singapore in 2019. Dan Fries is the organizer of the MMM5 in a few years to come. We try to mainstream this finding into the policy processes. In Marrakesh, we influence the policy processes. We talk with Ibu Nur, who is going to speak. She's a keynote speaker tomorrow, how to mainstream this in the climate change mitigation and adaptation. And she mentioned that mangrove can be part of the national nationally determined contribution, part of the Paris Agreement. Even the minister herself mentioned that it is very timely to include mangrove in the NDC of Indonesia that is going to be submitted again and again because this is a living document. So in conclusion, coastal blue carbon, including mangrove, is very important for climate change mitigation and adaptation. And in addition to that, we also have the ecosystem services from this important ecosystem that can be beneficial for local community. And including this in the national process is very crucial nowadays. So coastal blue carbon has been recognized globally, and I believe it can be mainstream at national and subnational level. Thank you very much.